Hello everyone, this is your host Daigo for Nexus eSports. Before we listen to the interview, I have a couple of announcements, but even before that, the interview that you are about to listen was recorded about a month ago, before MLG Anaheim, and unfortunately, due to personal circumstances, I wasn't able to edit the interview as fast as I wanted to. But rest assured, the interview is still relevant because we're talking about esports in North America and the inner workings of MLG and how things are currently within the industry. Now, in terms of the announcements, firstly, there is a website on the way that besides the esport related podcast, you will see articles related to gaming, and that is well under works, and I'm pretty excited about that, and hopefully you guys will enjoy it. And the second announcement is actually an announcement of an announcement, that there are two projects related to the podcast that are well underway. I will reserve the complete news by when it's nearing completion, but I think you guys will enjoy it. And well, without further ado, let's go to the interview. Welcome everyone for another episode of Nexus eSports Edition. We have today with us two amazing guests. If you're familiar with eSports, you probably know them, heard them, or follow them on stream. It's Josh Gray, also known as Clutch. And we also have David Bentz, also known as MLG Wiggin. And we're here to talk about eSports in the US scene and talk about its history, and how has it evolved, since the beginning towards, present day, and talk about Major League Gaming as well. So, hello everybody. How are you guys?
Great.
Yeah,
Doing pretty good, man.
Yeah,
excited to be here. Yeah, very excited.
No, thank you. I'm very, very excited about doing this. I mean, it's sort of like for the first time, I'm having like really real celebrities or something in the show. I feel like that. So before we go to the subjects of esports in the US and MLG, we gotta talk about you guys. Oh, bless you, man, Clutch. Oh, by the way, guys, Clutch is having a bit of a cold, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm getting over it. Should be good. First time I've been sick in like 6 years. I finished school, my body's like, hey, let's just break down and get sick for a couple days, but I'll be fine.
Oh, by the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
How has been your life, by the way, since you've graduated? And you sort of like laid back?
Yeah, I graduated last weekend. I had a great party. Just saw a lot of people there. Grandma's in town that I haven't seen in a while. Just having family there and really excited. But it's kind of not bittersweet, but there's this anxiety that is kind of built up to, well, school's over with, graduate, hooray, it's done. Now I have this entire world ahead of me that's a little bit, it's a little bit crazy, man, to think like, wow, I'm really on my own now. I don't have a set academic structure that I've followed since I was 5. And I've been out in the world, doing other things besides school.
Obviously. Yeah.
So just thinking of, okay, what am I going to do financially in the upcoming months so I can pay my rent and everything is a little bit daunting, but honestly, it's exciting as well because I'm really the one that needs to make that decision.
Yeah.
So
sure.
we'll see what happens in the next month or so. I've been sending my resume and applying to different positions within the esports world, but also looking at different auditions in the acting world and setting myself up to hopefully have something land here in the next month or so and make a decision. You know, sometimes when you have so many doors open to you, it's a little bit tough. But once knowing that some of those doors close makes those kind of decisions easier of where I'm going to move to and what I'm going to do. But eSports, I definitely want that to be a part of my life until the day I die. So,
true story, man. True story. I can actually, I agree with you completely by experience as well. But then, well, speaking of which, we have to introduce you guys to the people that are listening to this and don't know you, which would be rare, I would assume. But I'm happy to say, but I actually want to approach this introduction another way, and I want Dave to tell us who Josh Gray is, aka Clutch. And you can use your imagination. We want to hear the truth here right now.
Oh, this is dangerous.
How do you want like how he got into everything or anything? Because I can tell you kind of the story, and it tells you a lot about Josh of how we both got hired by MLG, and that would
let's say if you're walking, you're traveling across country, going on a road trip, and you have to get a bite to eat, and you get to in this diner in the middle of the night, and you see Josh in the counter. How would you describe Josh? What kind of like guy would you?
Josh is it's tough. Okay, he's one of those people that's just like you meet somebody and they're just very nice, and like the first thing they want to do is like be helpful or be nice or just like like a really outgoing person that you can immediately like see becoming friends with. That's what Josh is like. I think the first time I met him was before you went on your mission, right, Josh?
I think so. Yeah.
At his cousin's house, I think, right? At Hannah's? Yep. And it was just, I think we were all we all went swimming together, and it was just like immediately, it's just one of those people you immediately pick up and you're like, okay, I can hang out with this guy, we can be friends, whatever. And I think that if anyone's ever like met him, especially like in the esports world at like an MLG, you come up and talk to Josh, he's one of those people that'll immediately have a conversation with you, So that's how I would describe Josh if I met him in a diner. He's one of those like if I met Josh in a diner, he would immediately come say hello to me. That's how I would describe him.
Oh, that's awesome. So that's how you guys met then, right? Was it in a party?
It was just mutual friends. His cousin lived 2 doors down from me, and met in high school.
Nice.
And for a couple of years, and then he went on a mission for his church for a couple of years, and then came back, and we've been pretty good friends since.
Okay. And now, Josh, how would you describe David? Be it in a diner or a sketchy place.
See, now the trick to this is I said really nice things about him, so now he has to say nice things about him.
I remember when I first met Dave, but I had met a group of people all at once, and they had known my cousin because she was a manager for their football team. And I had just moved to Virginia and honestly didn't have any friends. The only people I knew were my parents, and I hadn't seen my cousin even in years. So I met them and immediately just like went into this not offensive mode, but more of like just cracking jokes and talking to them and breaking the ice, and realized that I'd really get along with them.
Okay.
And Dave at first, he wasn't quiet, but he didn't like have to say anything outright at first to make his presence known. But what he would do is he would crack these jokes or one-liners or these zings about people around him that were so funny and so smart. I went, this guy is like the brains of the operation of this group here. I met his parents, going over to his house and hanging out and watching movies and stuff, and found out like we had a lot of similar tastes in video games, in fantasy and science fiction, all these things. And he was one that could carry a conversation, not just socially, but scientifically, and would bring up points and counterpoints and do it in a really funny way. And I was like, this David guy, he's really smart. I mean, I think this kid's going to go places. And so that was my first reaction when I met Dave. And I just always remember how funny and witty he is.
Well, that's awesome. So, and then how did you guys get into esports? Was it something that happened the same time, or?
Who wants to tell the story, you or me?
I'll let you start. I'll fill in any gaps.
Sure. So, both of us had, like, very briefly played a little bit of Brood War. We weren't really aware of the competitive scene when we played or anything like that. And we played a lot of video games back in high school and stuff like that. But we didn't really do anything like, there's no professional gaming that we considered. We liked playing Halo and things like that, but like we never thought about MLG or anything like that.
Yeah, then, like I played a couple LANs in Brood War in Seattle, but nothing like really for major prizes or anything. It was more just fun,
Yeah, I think like the extent of my competitive gaming was like, I guess there wasn't any. I mean, I was really good at, like, I've always been able to get like high on leaderboards in games and good at games, but I've never, I just never thought about pro gaming ever. And then, StarCraft 2, the beta was announced, and one of the first people to get a key, was Josh. And so naturally I just immediately started begging him to let me play on his account. And after a while he was nice enough to relent, and I just like immediately fell in love with the game. And I was really good at it at first too. So I just jumped up to the top of the ladder and everything like that. And really,
everybody was really good when they made 5-Rax Reapers, but
yeah, I didn't play Terran 5-Rax Reaper. But anyway, so I really liked playing it. And then I heard that MLG was having their first StarCraft tournament down in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's really close to where it's 2-3 hour drive, 3-4 hours, something like that.
Yeah, 3 hours plus.
Yeah, and so, all my friends at that point liked watching me play and stuff like that, and because it's basically, our group of friends, what we do is we get together, we play video games like Smash Brothers, things like that, Yeah. And they would watch me play StarCraft, or, like, we'd, trade around and play StarCraft, and so we heard that the tournament was going to happen in Raleigh, and we're like, hey, man, or can I curse on here? Because I'm going to try to censor myself if I can.
Yeah, you can. If anything, I'll bleep you out. But
okay, I'll make it easy for you.
Actually, Brandy was the first one that used it's not actually a curse word, but she said a couple of times in the interview. I had to bleep that out.
All right. Okay, so we said screw it.
Yeah.
Let's go. I'll go enter it, and you guys come down. We'll have fun at MLG and stuff like that. Because playing Halo, we'd heard of MLG, but never really interested in it. And so like, yeah. So me and a couple friends, including Josh, we all drove down to North Carolina, and both me and Josh tried to get competitor passes, but I was the only one who could get one because they sold out in like 30 seconds.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think how many did they sell? That it was like only 64.
26. I think it's just 26 maybe. And then they had invited players as well. So.
Yeah, that's right. So I was lucky enough to get one because I camped for as soon as it was announced that you could buy them. I just immediately tried to buy it.
I tried to, but my internet browser had an error on it. I was like, "What is this?" And I tried to download another browser as fast as possible. By the time I tried, it was too late.
Yeah, I was like trying to get into a class like as soon as registration opens up in college. You got to like rush to get in. That's what it was like. So I got in, and then they just got spectator passes, and so we show up to this MLG in Raleigh, and we go to the hotel, and looking around, it's like all like 14-year-old kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, I think we found all the Halo players.
Yeah.
So we're looking around, and at this point, I posted on Team Liquid a lot and stuff like that, and I was looking around for like anybody that I would imagine could be involved in StarCraft.
Anybody with a driver's license or above, maybe.
Yeah. Okay, so the first person we see in the lobby that looks like they might have any idea of what StarCraft is this? How would you describe him? You wanna?
A 30-year-old Asian man.
Yeah, and we have no idea who he is. So we're like, hey, we're here to play StarCraft, and I was just wondering. And he had an MLG shirt on. That's important too. He's just like, oh, random Asian guy, bet he knows.
Yeah.
He had an MLG shirt on. And so we're like, hey, we're here to play StarCraft, and we're just wondering if you if you were involved somehow, or if you knew anybody that was here for that, because, we're looking around. We can't really, hold a conversation with anyone else that's here. And so he introduced himself. It turned out it was Lee Chen, or MLG Lee.
Oh, my God.
So it was like the perfect person to talk to, right?
Yeah.
So we had this really nice, he's really, really nice guy. Just immediately, showed us around, explained who he was, and it really didn't sink in for us because, we've never been to an MLG before. No idea how big it actually is. But, we had this really nice conversation. He went down, sat down with us, and asked us, how we got, what made us decide to come here and things like that. If we'd ever been to LANs, just kind of getting our background. And we had just this really great conversation. We really connected, you know, like we were all there for like the same thing. We had the same passions. And, so, you know, he wished us luck and we went and played in the tournament. And of course I lost.
Oh.
But at least, but I lost to Show, the Swedish Terran player.
Oh. So that's okay. That's not bad. That's not bad.
So yeah, at least I can hang my hat on that. At least I lost to a good player, not some random guy. But,
yeah.
But so was it the first day that I was out? Was I out that early?
Man.
No, second day.
I think it was second day. It was Saturday, second day.
Wow.
So we had all this time to run around and check out the MLG. And the first one, it was the StarCraft, was off in a corner. Like this little tiny roped off area. There's 10 computers and a projector screen, one bench, right?
Wow.
So it wasn't a lot to do there. So we watched the games we could, and I met Machine and a bunch of other, and In Control, and I met Day 9 and a bunch of other guys that I would eventually come to know were these huge names, and I wasn't really too familiar with them at that point. And we saw Li Chen walking around again. So immediately we just at this point we're just so excited to be in this atmosphere. We're like, oh man, this is the coolest thing I've ever been to. Is there any way we can get involved in this somehow? And it was like the stars aligned perfectly. They just happened to need one referee and one cameraman. Mm. And we're like, hey, Josh is going to school for that, and I kind of know what I'm talking about, right? I played in the tournament, I could be the ref. And so he's like, cool, yeah, here's my email and whatever, gave us his information. He's like, contact me after the event and we'll see what we can do. And that's how we got in. Really, we talked to Li Chen and everything happened to line up perfectly, and I guess we made a pretty good impression for ourselves and, kind of went out on a limb and sort of just made it happen.
Okay, moving on from the introduction and how you guys got involved in eSports. Let's talk about, eSports in the United States. When exactly, let's say, when was the time that eSports became a thing in the US?
I would say in the US, particularly with Counter-Strike, even though that was really big in Europe, I heard more about professional gaming or gamers with Counter-Strike than anything else back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And so I think that was more of a force in the U.S. than Brood War was, but Brood War had more of an international scene at the time.
Yeah, in the U.S. we had more of the shooters, right? Like the Unreal
the FPSs.
Quake and Counter-Strike.
Did you, and was it something that you guys were familiar with? Did you follow the Counter-Strike or FPS scene? Or you just were aware of something was going on, but you just didn't pay much attention to it?
I was aware that something was going on, but being, in junior high or even going into high school, I was more focused on school plays and sports and stuff like that, but I would always play video games. And there was a place in Seattle that I would go to that would have tournaments for StarCraft, or other games, even for Counter-Strike or something. Or I'd have LAN parties at my house, which were a lot of fun. But that was until EverQuest came out. Then once EverQuest came out, a lot of people just showed up to those different LAN cafes just to play EverQuest. But it was definitely a big FPS scene as far as competition that I knew of, but I didn't really follow anything. And also that was because the accessibility wasn't there as it is now, which I think we'll probably go into later. Yes. But there wasn't a YouTube, there wasn't live streams. There was my 56K modem. Yeah. And I'd have to actually preload a custom game for Counter-Strike before I could join a server. So my cache on my computer could have all the things loaded, because I would actually take too long to load the map and the server would kick me out. I'd think I would be idle. That's the kind of computer I had to work with Counter-Strike way back in the day.
Yeah, that was kind of similar to me. I was aware that there was pro or at least very high level gaming going on, but there was never. I live in Virginia Beach. It's a decently sized area, but there was never. It's not like a central area for any sort of gaming of any sort, right? So I was, in high school, I'm playing football and stuff like that, and I would love to go to a tournament or something like that, but there was just nothing here. There's nothing I could do about it, So I played Halo and things like that, and I would, every once in a while, once YouTube like started to become big, you could watch like 1.6 like ESCA highlights and stuff like that for like Counter-Strike or really cool stuff like that. But it was just not, it was kind of like a side note, like, oh, that's kind of neat. Okay, back to, what I'm doing in high school or whatever.
Yeah. It'd be different if we lived in Korea and we watched Brood War on TV, which is what they had during our time.
Exactly. I was wondering actually, did you guys ever watch StarCraft matches on TV? Okay, what's your theory in terms of the birth of eSports in the United States as is an industry where people can earn money from, and like, let's say for example, do you think that there was a lot of influence from the Asia region, specifically Korea in this case?
I think it's sort of something that'll inevitably happen, right? Like for a lot of people like myself including, the only reason I wasn't into competitive gaming is because I wasn't really aware of it. So as it grows more popular because of games, like StarCraft or League of Legends, and people become more and more aware of it, and it becomes more acceptable as a thing that you might be interested in doing or even or just following, it'll keep growing and be a thing that it's not unusual to be interested in. Like, it used to be that only kids played video games, right? Nowadays, the average age for someone who plays video games is like in their 30s.
Yeah.
So it's become this thing. The video game industry has grown to the point that it's ubiquitous. Like, everybody plays video games. And eventually, people are going to get interested in the people that are the best at it, So I think it's sort of inevitable that competitive gaming is a thing that will continue to grow to be sort of like where sports are, where it's like, maybe you grow up and you're like, oh, I'm interested in playing video games instead of playing for the football team in high school.
Yeah.
And hopefully ideally the end game for every one of us that are involved in esports is it becomes big enough that we can all do it full time, and actually get paid for it.
Yeah, for sure. And actually you're touching an interesting point, because you just reminded me, people are here, even in Canada, people are still surprised about esports and the concept. Why do people still struggle with the concept of esports, even in the States, for example?
I think it comes from a culture being grown up of the generation before us, the generation that their prime was in the 80s, of video games are a small hobby. They shouldn't be the main focus of your life, right? Yeah. And what's funny is this is the same thing that people would said of like filmmakers in the 50s and 60s, or like musicians, rock musicians in the 50s and 60s, right? They're like, yo, this kind of thing, like you shouldn't waste your time trying to do this. This is not meant for you. But they would follow their dreams and then be very successful, and that type of success brought popularity to them and also to the type of music or the type of art that they created, right? So with video games being another art form, another media form that has grown, and it continues to grow, now it has actually financially surpassed the movie industry, which is a very big event. Yeah. People now have to take video games seriously, not just a hobby, not just some backdoor event that you do on your own hours. It's actually a career for a lot of people, and to take it seriously like people take films seriously. There are a lot of pioneers in that, and there's a bit of obstacles that people have to overcome, especially with the ignorance that people have about video games. Columbine, for instance, people thought like Doom, that video game is a violent video game, and those kids played it a lot, and therefore it contributed to their violent actions and gave them ideas and stuff like that. Well, that's like blaming a pencil for misspelled words. It's overcoming that ignorance that people don't understand, or they're not involved in that culture, but they view a certain part of a game and go, that's violent, therefore our kids will be violent. It's like, no, it's not the problem. It's not the cause. And so overcoming that a bit. But also, the United States is behind technologically. They are. We get phones that Japan has seen like for 2 years ago, right? Yeah. Our internet is a joke. Our bandwidth is a joke. You can go to a hotel in Korea and you can have 80 up and 80 down in that hotel, upload and download speed. So trying to overcome that as well, as an entire economy, is a little bit difficult. But now where we are with the power and the executive decisions of people our age in their mid-20s to 30s, that are making money, that can invest money in the video game industry, the video game world, is very promising compared to what it was, 5, 10, or even 15 years ago.
Yeah, and just a quick example, have you ever tried to explain to your parents how to install something on their computer?
Yeah.
The most painful, we just take it for granted, you just click something, drag it here, whatever. Yeah. But it's just so incredibly painful to watch somebody struggle with stuff that we take for granted with computers these days. So competitive gaming in general is just a very new world for, the last generation, right? It's hard for, I can understand why it'd be hard for our parents, for example, to understand, why would anybody want to watch someone play video games? Why would anybody want to watch someone turn left for 200 miles? Yeah, to each their own. I don't think NASCAR is interesting at all, but I'll watch somebody play video games. So yeah. We have these different interests and stuff like that, and it's always gonna be hard for somebody who's who grew up without the internet or grew up without the computers the way we have them now to understand why we'd want to watch someone play on on those computers. So we have to sort of, Josh said, we're just sort of getting over that now that gaming has become such a big thing that it's sort of like an interesting hump that we had to get over. Now that gaming is acceptable for anyone to do instead of it's just those nerds, or whatever, then maybe watching people play games is something that'll be acceptable for everyone too.
And if you wind the clocks back 100 years with the dawn of television, I'm sure people made arguments of why would you watch people play football when you can go play it outside? Or when you could go knit a sweater or learn how to cook. Why would you watch TV when you could do this?
Yeah.
And now we make the same argument except it's the internet and the computer. Sports, televised sports, that hasn't been around forever. That's, there was a process that had to occur that it wasn't popular and then it started to become popular and it grew. The same thing is happening with eSports. History is repeating itself except we're learning from the lessons of the people before us.
That is true. No, I completely agree. And speaking of which, and you mentioned this point before, much of the growth of esports now in the last 10 years or so is because of the technology, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been because of accessibility and that technology has brought to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, just look at what streaming has done for StarCraft and gaming in general. The fact that you can go watch your favorite player makes a world of difference as opposed to, maybe in a month you see them play in one tournament.
Yeah.
And the players can actually make money from streaming, and that can pay for their monthly expenses, which is really exciting. There's actually a way that they can make money outside of tournament winnings. So that's a pretty good system to have up right now. And I wish I had more viewers so I could pay my rent from people watching me. Sure, Wiggin feels the same, but it keeps growing, right? As long as I keep streaming and if I make a presence on the internet, then that's how I'll have more people watch. But, Idra is his own phenomenon. He's his own personality. So when he starts streaming, he gets 10,000 people watching automatically. That's power. That's some serious power. And that's financial power for any kind of companies that want to look at advertising, at sponsorship. So that's exciting.
Did it took a lot of examples from Korea or other areas of the world, do you think?
Well, I'm no esports historian, but from what I understand, it was a lot of learning from mistakes. There were a lot in the past. There's been a lot of really briefly successful esports organizations CGS. I think is the big example where they were hugely popular and they just crashed. Right? There's that idea of the bubble that pops, like Josh said, and I think a lot of what we have today is because of those companies failing. MLG has so far been one of the most stable examples of a company in esports. They've been doing it forever, starting mainly with Halo, and that's something that we didn't really have in the States before. And I don't know if there's really a great example. I don't think they really learned anything from anyone else in Korea or in Europe, because Korean esports is its own completely different thing. It's partly government run with KESPA and things like that. So it's not we can't really take from that, right?
Yeah.
But European esports, for example, has always been, I think it's probably safe to say European esports has been bigger than North American esports for quite a while.
Yes.
So maybe So maybe there's definitely been some sort of bleed over from there that we've learned a lot from. Because, like, you know, if you think of, like, Counter-Strike teams, for example, you think of European teams.
Yeah, well, qualifying teams for, you know, WCG and different tournaments that are run here, you know, everybody learns year by year how to make it better, how to make it more attractive to new eyes on the scene. But honestly, the most success you're going to have of forming any league has to be from knowing the community. I mean, Major League Gaming started with Halo, right? And Halo was built of people getting together, hooking up their Xboxes, and destroying each other.
Yeah.
So MLG built off that. They had these different convention centers or areas they'd go to and invite Halo players to go and compete and, you know, maybe even bring their Xboxes, or they provide Xboxes and TVs there, and it would build from there. There was already a passion that people had for competing in that specific title, and MLG provided the space, provided the electronics for the most part, and they provided the award, and everything else that everybody else brought. So by harnessing that passion from the community, even though if you're going to make mistakes production-wise, you still have people that want to go, that want to compete, and be surrounded by like-minded people that have the same passion for your game. So if you can have that as a foundation and build up and not balloon yourself, I think that CGS did. They just try to do too much, too fast with too much money. Then it's going to be a success. But also, the thing that's really difficult about that type of game with Halo is you have a new iteration like every 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And so eventually you'll lose that initial fire, that initial passion. And this is contrasting to Brood War, where Brood War was there for 12 years, right? And that continued to grow and to grow and to grow. And that foundation of passion already existed on the internet. It already existed on Team Liquid and other sites. And so when MLG brought StarCraft 2 on their circuit, they had no idea what was going to happen. And the inclusion of StarCraft 2 on the pro circuit turned the company on its head. It was no longer the flagship Halo game. It became StarCraft 2 as the flagship game for MLG. And that's because the passion was there, and the people were there. MLG built it and the people came. So that's, to me, is very key, is to have that community passion, that fire that keeps it alive. Yeah. That goes back to the developers and the games themselves, right? Having a game that comes out every year, every 2 years is not a way to grow a community. That's why StarCraft Brood War has been so popular, and StarCraft 2, you know, has been out for over 2 years, or almost 2 years, and it's still going strong, even though Heart of the Swarm is on the horizon. There's not going to be much changes to the game, right? It's just maybe a couple units, but it's not like an entire sequel compared to other games. So I think that's been a big factor as well.
What do you guys think that's the most popular game within the esports scene in the US? Is it SC2 or MOBA games?
I think just everywhere it's League of Legends right now, isn't it? I mean, they have a completely insane community and viewership, and there's so many people playing that game. I think StarCraft 2 is definitely... I would say StarCraft 2 definitely has the most passionate community, and they get huge numbers too, but League of Legends is just turned into this massive beast. Like, it's ridiculously popular. I mean, like, everyone plays League of Legends nowadays.
Well, and it also helps that Riot advertises these tournaments within their own game client, within the launcher. Blizzard hasn't been as involved as Riot has over the years with their game, but now Blizzard is stepping up to be more involved. And I think with the release of Diablo 3 and future WoW expansions, you know, when you log into Diablo 3 and in the corner of the launcher it has StarCraft 2 tournament live now, click here, or there's the live video feed. That's going to put more eyes on the esports scene. But League of Legends, I know, is the biggest game worldwide. It's the biggest game in Korea right now. But I think StarCraft 2, like Dave said, has the most passionate fans, maybe the most vocal fans, and probably like per capita of esports fans compared to casual fans. I think StarCraft 2 has more esports fans than just casual fans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And there's definitely room on the scene for both those games too. It's not you can only have one successful game or anything like that.
Oh no, there's still more room. I mean, a PC shooter for sure.
Yeah.
You know, could definitely fill a void there.
Come on, CS:GO. You can do it.
currently now, presently, how do you see the North American esports scene? How in comparison with other regions? Like, is it very solid? Is it growing? What are their positive points or unique points that you don't see other scenes having? What would be the points that need to be worked on?
In 2011, an event happened in Columbus, Ohio, and that was MLG Columbus. Yeah. And that was the first time that MLG and GSL, they introduced the partnership program. That was the first time Koreans came to a major North American event representing their teams from GSL. So it's a very big deal, right? GSL was already the established StarCraft 2 tournament league in the world, pretty much. I mean, Jinro had competed over there. Other foreigners had tried to compete over there. But when they came, and I interacted with them firsthand, I was in charge of making sure they had a good time along with Mr. Che. Yeah. And they enjoyed it so much that they told other people about it, and Boxer himself came to the next tournament to compete. So that was evidence enough to show that the foreign scene, specifically the North American scene, offered something that was worth Koreans' time to sit on a plane for 14 hours. To me, this scene is still growing, and because of the accessibility of with broadband internet and the passion of foreign fans, that passion being built from years of watching these events online to actually being able to go to the events live with like-minded people and to see pros and to see these casters they followed for so many years, to me is very exciting on many levels, but it's also going to continue to grow. And I feel that MLG Anaheim will be the biggest esports event outside of Korea in history.
Why do you say that? Is there something special coming your way that we should know about?
Well, I mean, MLG has announced a lot of what's going to happen, but League of Legends being there, StarCraft 2 being there, the fighting games being there, which I'm excited about as well.
Yeah.
But Blizzard's involvement with the World Championship Series tournament happening there and Heart of the Swarm beta happening there. Yeah. It's like a mini BlizzCon. So people that won't get their BlizzCon fix for the year will show up to get their hands on Heart of the Swarm. But also it's within the light of Korea and Blizzard having that big announcement over in Korea, right? So it's like, it's the next chapter where a lot of that history of esports and that foundation that was built with Korea, is moving into this new chapter in esports where it's not just Korea anymore, it's the entire world, specifically the United States, North America, and Europe. But Blizzard's involvement, to me, is very paramount for the continued success and growth of esports. So to me, I feel with Blizzard being a strong force there, it's going to be a huge event. And League of Legends, it's League of Legends, man.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people have been wanting to see a MOBA title in the pro circuit. So that's what I feel.
Yeah, it's been a long coming, I would say. And what about your perspectives in terms of, okay, there's something that needs to be worked on in this particular area in esports if we want to succeed or get a bit better. Is there something that comes to mind?
Yeah, I have something. I think I've mentioned this a couple of times on Shifting Gears, actually. The scene in Korea is so successful, and for using StarCraft as an example, the Korean StarCraft players are so successful, is that there's an infrastructure that exists to allow people to become competitive gamers in Korea. You know, you can leave school and become a competitive player. You don't have to have 100,000 stream viewers and have won a tournament before someone will sign you to a contract or will give you a spot in a gaming house in Korea, right? They build players up from the ground. They take young players. Like in Brood War, for example, if, like, say CJ Antis signs a player, that player isn't expected to win a game on stage for like a year, right? Like he has he has plenty of time to build up, train, become, get that shot at becoming a pro player. Whereas for example, North America, like if you're not Huck or Idra, and you've basically already become a pro player, how do you then actually become a pro player? Because, in order to be good enough at like StarCraft, for example, you need to be practicing 10 hours a day, and you can't do that if you have a job or you're in school or something like that. Yeah. So if I were to say that there's one thing that we need in North America, it's for there to be sort of an infrastructure where somebody can attempt to become a pro player without already being a pro player. It's why, for example, in North America, we have so many of our professional players were already pros before, right? They've just kind of come over to this game, like even, like an In Control or a Nidra or a Huck or a DeMuslim. All those names, they're people that were in the Brood War scene or Warcraft 3. They were already pro players. They'd already made a name as some of the biggest names in their games, and then now they're in StarCraft 2, and now they're getting, and they're getting paid for StarCraft 2. But what about, that kid in high school that like loves playing and he's really talented, but, he has to go to college, he has to get a job. How's he gonna make that transition into trying to be a pro player? In Korea, you can do that. In North America, you really can't. So that's what we need. Like, we have a very stable esports organization in MLG where there's going to be a tournament, there's going to be sponsorship, there's going to be advertisement, there's going to be a place to play and a game to play. But we don't have a system that allows you to try to be a pro player.
Yeah, and what's difficult too is to try to compete against a culture that has had that for the last 10 plus years. And that's why these Koreans are dominating so much. Is that they have that accessible to them. Yeah. But I think that gap is getting smaller and smaller. It's a process, it's happening, but as more of these foreign teams, these foreign players place higher and higher in tournaments, more money, more sponsorship, more support is going to them, so they can therefore concentrate harder, and improve their skill in the game. But yeah, it is difficult, and we see that kind of structure, and even government involvement. The Air Force in Korea has a StarCraft 2 stream, or a StarCraft 2 team, or StarCraft Brood War team too. Seeing that, and then having the North American team where it's like, yeah, I work 30 hours a week, but I'm able to play during this time. It's like, you don't have the same structure, the same training structure. It's like Rocky versus that Russian dude in Rocky 4.
Yeah.
I mean, that guy had all the machines, he had the steroids, and Rocky was chasing a chicken in a snow-covered barn, It's two different things. But yeah, on the player side, that's definitely it. But on the production side, I want to comment that there's a very small handful of people that can actually work full-time in esports. And in order for the productions to get bigger and better and to have more dedicated people that can hone their craft and their skills can grow, is they have to do it full-time, right? And a lot of people are fueled by very small amount checks or by passion and do it for free. So as the scene grows, hopefully with the increase of money going into these companies and into these leagues, they can provide, or even the teams themselves, they can provide jobs where people can dedicate their entire work day to esports, and that's how esports will become better. Passion is amazing, but passion doesn't pay the bills, and sometimes production value will wane a bit when you can't be 100% committed to it. So that's another thing in North America that needs to change, is that more full-time jobs need to happen in order for people not only to chase their dream and make their dreams come true, but to be able to dedicate all of their talents to improving esports.
True enough. And speaking of which, that actually ties into the second part of the podcast episode. If not the main objective of this show, quote and unquote, air quotes, Nexus Esports, is approach esports to not only people that are familiar with, but to the people that are not, and describe it as any other business, any other sports, physical sports. And so let's talk about Major League Gaming as it's a Wimbledon tournament or something. How big is the production? How many people are involved behind a Major League Gaming tournament?
Oh,
there's
man.
A lot that goes into it, man. It's
yeah.
like if you go back behind that black curtain at an MLG, it's like a command center back there. There's rows of monitors and people are going crazy, and in the Matrix, the architect's room.
Yeah.
It's a little bit like that back there. There's wires everywhere, there's screens, everything. Like, so much goes into it, and people don't really understand how hard you work at an MLG weekend. Like, you're talking 12-hour days every day, sometimes longer. And that's why, Josh said, it's so important that hopefully, someday everyone's getting paid well enough to do it full time, because, man, it takes a lot out of you to go to one of those weekends and work like that in production, or, being an admin or anything you're doing there, there's more than I ever imagined goes into running an MLG.
Yeah. There's an entire road crew that's there days before to set everything up. And there are all sorts of switchboards and internet technicians and broadcast technicians and people running all over the floor to make sure everything's working. A lot goes into it. It's not just like 4 people hanging out playing cards and like, oh, hey, something went wrong. Send Jim. And Jim goes and flicks a switch and changes it. No, this is as professional as you can get for its size. Yeah, it's impressive to see all that stuff. And when we had Lee Chen go around and give us a tour, I think when we first started being contracted for MLG, and throw out all these different numbers of bytes and showing us all these different chords and stuff, and everything worked. It was very, very intense and in-depth. So yeah, it is. When you talk about professional, this is a professional thing. This is a professional production.
Yeah. Were you guys daunted by the size and scope of it when you guys first started?
I think I was more excited about it, to be honest. Like, I couldn't help myself. I was bouncing around the whole time,
Yeah. I had been exposed to more live productions than live video productions like theater and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But some things translate. You have people backstage that have to press the different light switches and the sound cues and light operators and curtain operators and all those things. So that translates to me on any kind of production. But just to know that there was different production teams for the 3 different games that were going on, or multiple games that were going on, that was all live at the same time on the same website, just different channels, I thought was pretty impressive. But yeah, like Dave, I was like, oh, this is really cool. This is really cool. There's day 9. Oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
So.
And speaking of which, let's go. Well, Clutch, you're a host and interviewer at MLG events, and I think I would speak for everyone that's familiar with MLG events that it wouldn't be an MLG without you and introducing players.
Just making sure I get the right teams.
Exactly. So I don't think it would be an MLG without you. But let's talk about how you prepare yourself. Like, talking about the structure, being a host and interviewer. How does your day start in that weekend? How do you set up? What's your power juice? Like, every morning you wake up, you have some special pancakes or something, or?
Nah, I make sure I get a good breakfast or a good lunch, because I don't know what I'm going to eat during that day. It could be so busy that I maybe just have a half hour to eat. But let's take, for example, a Saturday. Friday was great. It was a really good time. We had a lot of good matches, had some good interviews. Saturday, I arrive. We go live at 2, so I show up at 12. I'll talk to Puckett and make sure what he wants for the day, what kind of BIC interview we want lined up, different players that are open for interviews, looking at different schedules, who's getting cast when, the different storylines that are happening, and go from there. So we try to have something scheduled, or something that we can fall back to in case there is an issue or we need to fill time. But other than that, it's on the fly, man, and especially trying to work with players for interviews and stuff like that. The players are there to compete, and their schedules are going to revolve around their competition and being prepared for their competition. And I in no way want to infringe upon that. So I'll try to talk to team managers and see, hey, is anybody, a representative of your team, willing to be interviewed, a player, something like that. And if the player's lost, they're not going to feel good about being there. They're not really going to feel down to be interviewed. Yeah. So that part is a little bit difficult, but the process is getting better, working with the production crew and what they want and how we can accomplish it.
Yeah.
I prepare when I arrive physically, like I do vocal warm-ups. I make sure I'm centered in my body. And I think about different players and articulating my voice and making sure I get the team names right for some reason. I've known these guys for years, and my brain sometimes just like to play jokes on me or something. But I think that's just nerves, and the more I do it, the better I am. But being in that live atmosphere, I just have to be comfortable with myself, comfortable with talking to other people, and to hype the crowd. And if I feel that I'm prepared and I'm ready, then whatever they throw my way, I'll do the best I can, and that's what you guys have seen. But honestly, I have to be very flexible on where they want me, why they want me, and how long they want me in front of the camera. Yeah. To go from there.
So, and speaking of which, I mean, do you answer to someone in that sense of that part of the production and interviews and broadcasting? Is there a director behind you? Only?
Yes. At the last, I worked a lot with Mark Turner, who was a great guy, but unfortunately he's not with MLG anymore. But during the last MLG event, I worked with Ryan Thompson, who's a director, and he also directs a lot of the stuff out of the studio up in New York for MLG. And, for example, we'll be behind the scenes, the production area, and Puckett will be standing there working on different stuff, and we'll look at the match, and it could be like Losira versus Idra, and it looks like Idra's going to win it, and it's during game 2, and so Puckett will come to me and is like, hey, we want to interview Idra, so a couple questions after he wins, and after that. The players are getting ready during during that time. And so after my interview, they'll run a commercial and then the guys will, take it from the desk and then they'll want me to introduce the next players. I said, oh, okay, cool. So I'll watch the rest of the game, see if there's any questions I can ask Idra during that game, like why he made certain decisions. And then once he wins, or if he doesn't win and Losira wins and I have to think of different questions for Losira, I go out there, I'll tell the player that, hey, we're going to interview you real quick. We set it up. I do the interview. They leave the stage. I tell the players that are getting ready in their booths that we're going to do a player introduction of them. If one of them speaks Korean, I'll make sure the translator, Wani or Smix or Kevin, whoever's translating, is there ready to go. If I have the questions in my mind ahead of time, I'll tell the translator what the questions are so they can prep the player to have a better constructed answer. And if the player speaks English, I'll say, hey, here are the questions I'm going to ask you, just so you know what you want to say instead of thinking right on the spot. And so they have like a minute or two to come up with a response, which I found is better at times because the player, honestly, I don't want to ask really in-depth questions because the player needs to focus on the match they're about to play, right? If it's after the game and I have like 5 minutes to fill, then yeah, I could talk about, okay, in game 2, you decided to do this drop at this time, like what was going through your mind, stuff like that. But before a match, those are not the kind of questions to ask. I want to ask questions that pumps the player up themselves, that gets the audience pumped up, and lets them focus on the moment instead of deviating from that focus. So I know that's a lot, like I'm saying a lot, but all that is going through my head of making sure that everything is about the player and to highlight the player and the player feels comfortable because that's what we're all here to see. Everything else is like auxiliary, right? Like me dancing on the stage, that was just a happenstance moment. I'd love to do it. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. But we're there for the players and we're there for the competition. So that's me. That's what I do. And I make sure I get the team names right. And sometimes I'll walk by where Wiggin's at and the player pit and be like, TSL, right? Polt TSL, not Polt Prime, Polt TSL. They're like, yeah, Polt TSL Polt, TSL Polt. Then I go on stage and I say STC for some reason. Well, the STC, to be fair, the STC was actually scheduled to play the last match against somebody else, but they changed it to be Polt versus Stefano because of their storyline. So somewhere in my brain, it decided it was going to be STC instead of Polt. But it's so funny because I remember the cameras in front of me, and it's late Saturday. We've been working all day. Tired, but I'm wired too at the same time, right? I got that adrenaline pumping. And I look at the camera and I say, the STC, and I go, what did I just say? Like that face I made. I go, no, I'm sorry. This is like Quantic all over again. No, it was TSL Polt. So that was a funny moment. But that's me, man. That's what goes through my mind, when I am the MC interviewer.
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned something really, really interesting. How much does that happen behind the stage in terms of schedule between the matches? Like sometimes the team's history and you have to reschedule or change the brackets, so to speak. Does that happen a lot?
They never change the brackets. The brackets are never changed. Like they never finagle it so this person's up against this person. It always happens based on the player rankings, right? Or based on the matches themselves. Like they never try to fix matches so we have big name players. But what we will try to do is adjust our schedule. So instead of like Stefano or Pulp playing on some game station in the player pit, we'll have them play on the main stage. That doesn't happen. It maybe happens once or twice during the whole weekend where like, okay, we're going to wait for this next game to finish up on the feature station to know who's going to be facing Stefano. And then so we may have to fill like 10 minutes. And so like, hey, can you go interview this person real quick, or can you fill 10 minutes? And I have thought of different things during the day, but then I execute them whenever I thought of. Or sometimes I'm like, okay, I'll figure something out. And I'll talk to somebody real quick, or I may grab one of the different casters and come out there and talk about the event so far and try to fill time that way to create some sort of content so it's not just crowd shots. Yeah. But we try to have a good schedule and be flexible enough to where I don't have anything. I'm always trying to be prepared with something. And if all else fails, I'll just dance. But like I said, it's about the players, and I'm there to entertain and to make sure the players are focused and also have a good time. And the fans, I mean, I gotta hype the crowd. I mean, people have traveled there, some all the way from Australia that are there for an event, and so I gotta make sure they have a good time.
Yeah. Sure. What's your most memorable moment working at MLG? Be it an interview or something that happened and sort of like sticks in your mind.
One of them is at MLG Columbus. I was a production assistant at the time. This was in 2011. This was the first time all the Koreans had come over. And Lee Chen came to me and said, Josh, this is really, really important that these Koreans have a good time, that they are respected, they are treated well, and that all their needs are taken care of for the tournament. So I'm putting you in this position to make sure that everything goes right with them. And a lot's counting on this. And I said, Lee, you got it, man. And of course I did a bunch of other things at the event, but I was there to help with the Koreans, along with the player wrangler Alyssa. But It was at the end of the tournament. MMA won, and we were walking back to the hotel, and I volunteered to be part of the security detail to get them back to the hotel because I was just making sure everything was good to go with them. And some other security guys went with us. And I offered to carry MMA's trophy because it was a little bit of a walk to the hotel. And MMA told Milkus, and then Milkus told me that he really appreciated me, and he just said thank you, but he said if I ever want to come to Korea, I could hang out with him at the Slayer's house.
Oh my God.
I was like, what? So him and I, whenever we see each other at an event, we'll talk a little bit, and his English is getting better, but we're always excited to see each other. And this transcends into BlizzCon of last year. I was at the hotel, and Mr. Che and I were sitting there having a conversation, and he came down with MVP, and it was him versus MVP MVP in the finals for the GSL at BlizzCon. And the GSL people were asking me questions, and they recorded me, and they said, who do you think's going to win? And they had MMA and MVP turn around. And I said, you know what? MVP's favored to win, but MMA is like my brother. So I pointed to MMA. At the tournament, this is the most people I've ever been around for an esports tournament at BlizzCon. It was just thousands upon thousands of people there. And I was a spectator, right? So I didn't have to worry about all the different things that were happening. Production-wise, I could just enjoy it. And it was me and Galen, MLG Omerta, were next to each other. And MMA won. Man, he won. And I was so excited, and he walked down the stage, and we got to hug each other, and I was just so excited for him. And then later on, he saw the video of me saying I'd choose him to win, and he told me in English, he's like, I saw the video. And I was like, yeah, man, I was just so excited. And then there was a video, that they showed the video of me hugging him on GSL when they showed his win. So that, seeing him be successful and knowing that I worked really hard to make MLG a success, and his career is a success because of his winnings at MLG and the GSL. It's just that's why I do it. That passion that burns not just for the fans, but also for the players. So I find those two moments very memorable.
Wow. And my second and last question in terms of your role in MLG would be, is it easy, or how easy or hard it is for people that want to work in esports, be it as a host and interviewer, an esports journalist, if you will, currently, and what would you recommend to them?
Create your own content. Make yourself a presence on the internet. No matter how small it is, you have to start somewhere, and be at the right place at the right time. And being at the right place means you're going to have to invest some money in plane tickets and travel expenses to go to these different tournaments, to maybe snag a player or two for an interview, and give them a bit of an incentive, do the interview and then slip them $10 and say, hey man, thanks a lot for the interview. They'll be like, whoa, I don't want, a lot of them will be like, I don't need your money, but some of them will really appreciate that gesture.
Do I have to pay you right now, Clutch? Is that what you're saying?
No. That will make you different, or give them a gift or something that will make them, that will make you stand out compared to just a random fan that wants to get a quick picture, right? You want to be treated like a professional, so you act like a professional.
Yeah.
And when you act like a professional, people will recognize that. And the reason that you should be remembered is because the entire esports scene is really saturated with talent right now. There's only so much production that occurs for esports. There's so many different casters and people that post shows and do a lot of different things on their own. But if you just believe in yourself, and if you can be yourself and bring something unique, because everybody's unique, to the space of esports, as it continues to grow, there will be more spaces out there for different talent and different people. Also, diversify your portfolio. And that means do as much as you can for StarCraft 2, but also look at other games. Look at League of Legends. Look at Gears of War 3. Look at CSGO and get involved in those communities and invite players or casters or personalities from those communities to do interviews online. Doing that won't hurt you. It'll just give you more avenues to go down. And that is my advice. And always be prepared. I always brought a suit jacket with me, even though I wasn't considered talent for MLG. I was just a cameraman. But I always brought my suit jacket with me just in case. And one time I needed my suit jacket, and I brought it, and now I'm talent.
Awesome. Wise words, man. Okay, so let's switch to Dave. He's been quiet for a while. So you are a StarCraft 2 admin / referee at MLG. Could you describe for us, what that entails? Because
what exactly does that mean?
Exactly, because people would be like, oh, a referee in a football match or a soccer match or even, in a tennis match and whatnot. What would you exactly do?
Yeah, what kind of whistle do you use, Wiggin?
Well, I have various color-coded cards. Part of it is a lot like that. It's, what you'd expect from someone you would call a referee, making sure people are following the rules. There's no cursing in chat, things like that. Obviously there's the various things that are possibilities for people to cheat, but nobody really does in the StarCraft community, though it's happened in the past. So, you have to have somebody there to watch every game that's played that's an official, game at MLG, and that's part of our job is to, keep an eye out for things like that, This generally the cheating stuff, right? That's our job. We're there to police that. But also, a lot of our job is where the admin word comes in, right? We're helping to really run the meat of the tournament. We're getting people to the right places at the right times. Setting everyone up in the right rounds on the right maps. All recording everything, making sure someone's there to witness exactly. Because God forbid someone doesn't see a game and then they argue about who won. You can't allow situations like that to occur, right? So you have to have somebody there just to make sure everything's on the up and up, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of it's just it's the grunt work that goes into running the actual tournament instead of the production side of things. And we do help production a little bit. We'll set up lobbies for games that are being streamed, things like that, or there's that aspect to it too. But most of it's honestly to use another football metaphor. We're kind of like the offensive or defensive linemen, right? We're like the guys in the trenches that nobody really knows. Like, go ahead and try to name another admin, right? Like, nobody really knows about us, but we do a lot of the actual grunt work that goes into the running of the actual tournament.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what I do. Like, I spend, the entirety of my day helping players get to the right spots and making sure they're doing the right things and recording results and all that. Actually you're running the tournament.
No, that's man, it's very crucial, and it's too bad that not many people think about you guys. So
well, they'll think about us when we mess up. Like, God forbid we tell someone the wrong something about cross spawn or anything like that. But I don't like it. It doesn't bother me that like Josh said, like, even to more of an extent for him, like, he's there as the MCs presenting these players. Even more for me, like, the tournament's about the players, right? Yeah. It's not about me at all. I'm just there like half the time I'm there as a fan, right? Like, I'd want to see these guys play, and so a lot of them are, friends of mine, so I want to, I get the best seats in the house, really. I get to sit right behind the player at my station and watch him play at an incredibly high level, so it doesn't bother me at all that people don't really think about the admins, Yeah, it's whatever.
Oh yeah, no, I understand, but to get inside the inner workings of an event as MLG is quite interesting. So I asked this to Josh, and I'm going to ask you as well, just to be fair, and also I'm curious. It's an MLG event in a weekend. You wake up. What do you eat? What's your power juice, and how do you start your day?
Okay, we have to be there a little bit before the production guys. We have meetings that start at 9 at the latest usually, and I'm the kind of person who likes to get there early. So I usually am one of the first people at the venue. I get there at around 7 in the morning usually, because I like to get in. Yeah, I like to get in there, get settled in, talk to people as they come in, like my boss Ryan Moore or Mark Snyder and things like that. And I honestly like to jump on the computers and play a few games, just because I'm in that atmosphere. I just like the only thing I want to do while I'm there is like play.
What games do you play? Like StarCraft 2?
StarCraft.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Nice.
So I'll like jump on one of the StarCraft PCs and play a couple games, stuff like that. Or if like a player gets in early, I might try to play against them or something like that. And then so, I'll get in at like 7 in the morning, and we'll have our meetings, things like that, and some of us will help like check people in, things like that at the door, like the actual registration, stuff like that. Others of us will help, you always have a bunch of people that have never been there before that are playing, like local people and things like that.
Yeah.
So, a lot of what we do is helping people just feel comfortable in that situation. Because, I came into MLG as a player, right? So I know that it's really intimidating. You get there and you're like, where do I go? Am I going to be late for something? I have no idea what's going on, right? So a lot of what I try to do is just very actively speak to competitors and spectators and things like that are there. If somebody doesn't look like they know where they're going, I try to help them out, things like that. And that's usually occupies my time all through, warming up for the day until the actual tournament starts, which is a little bit later in the afternoon, like, when Josh would show up. And from that point on, it's like balls to the walls, 100%, just working, running back and forth, running these rounds, because we have an hour to run a best of 3. You can have one game last an hour, right? It's weird. One thing that I'm kind of proud of at MLG is we're very good at being on time with our tournament. And we're usually very, very good about getting people down, setting down. We're very unbiased, I guess, about how we deal with people being late and disqualifications. We're very strict about everything, like everything for no matter who you are, there's that big story, disqualified White-Raw for being late that one time.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are, like, you have to be there on time, and we run everything very smoothly. And so a lot of that's because there's me and an increasing every event number of other officials that are there, just busting our ass, right?
Yeah.
Oh, excuse my language.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
And so that'll go on until, depending on the day, it can go on until 2-3 in the morning.
Wow.
So it's a pretty long day for me, but
wow.
I enjoy it so much.
Yeah.
So then, then go to the next day. I'll wake up. I'll get an energy drink and something to eat. Usually like a like a granola, like yogurt thing that you can get at like the venue there. And do it again next morning, 7 in the morning.
Wow.
Do that for the whole weekend.
Wow.
So it's not quite as diverse and exciting as like being on production, which is something I'd love to get into at some point. But it's very gratifying and satisfying work because you're there the entire time with the players and the fans. You know, you have a lot, and you get all these really nice, you know, interactions. Like, you know, there might be like a young kid there that's like, it's his first event, and you can kind of like help him out, tell him where to go, you know, make sure he has a good time so he'll come back another time, you know, like that. And you can tell like people really appreciate what you're doing, even if they, you know, even if they're not really there for you or anything. You know, people really, you know, appreciate it. So I enjoy my job.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, God, I mean, it's anyone's dream, right? Doing something that you love. Mm-hmm. And okay, let's talk about when a tournament is playing and people are watching. Do you have your own station where you are checking everything is running smoothly? Nobody's is cheating. There's no cheating apparently. How do you go about that when that hits?
It depends on where we are. Like we have, you know, the main player pit where there's the rows and rows of computers. We also have featured stations, which are off to the side and elevated a little bit, and people can crowd around. And there's usually 2 of those, so 4 computers. And then there's, of course, the main stage. And it's a little bit different depending on where you are at the time.
Yeah.
But no matter where you are, you're physically, like, right there, right next to a player. So you can see exactly what's going on. And that's how you monitor it. You're not like, observing a game from another computer. You're actually, like, behind the person, you know?
Oh, wow.
So, because, I mean, say there was some hypothetical nefarious individual that wanted to cheat. You know, he could have an iPod or his phone on, and someone could be feeding him what they see on the stream or something like that. So we have to be there to witness exactly what's going on, make sure, you know, everyone has their sound-canceling headphones if they're on main stage, things like that. And a lot of it's, you know, like, especially with the Korean players, speaking with the Korean players and communicating with them, making sure they know to get on the right map and the right, you know, stuff like that. So, like, typically, say I have a match on the featured station, and there'll be a whole crowd around the stage, and I'll get up there and, you know, say it's like MC and Huck or something like that, and I'll talk to MC. And, you know, we have all these, the whole process of how we go through starting a match to make sure everything is the same, always the same, you know, we get like vetoes in certain orders, things like that. Get all that sorted out, have a player start the game, invite casters, things like that. And then give the ultimate go ahead. You know?
Yeah. Awesome.
Game.
Oh, hang on, Dave. No, it's just the mic, sort of like the call.
It's Robot Dave. It's Robot Dave for a sec, Dave. You gotta plug yourself back in.
Yeah.
All right, hang on.
Yeah, Dave runs on 16 triple D batteries.
Is that any better?
Yeah, now it sounds perfect.
Okay, sorry, I don't know what happened. I need to buy a new mic.
Yeah, new mic. He needs a new mic, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we lost you when you were talking about that you were behind the players and checking that everything runs smoothly until then.
Yeah, so, you know, we have the whole process we go through to make sure everything gets vetoes, all that, blah, 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 blah. And it's the same for everything. Part of our job is making sure everything is always the same for every player, you know? So we have the whole, like, list of processes that we go through and things like that. And then, you know, we'll sit there and we'll just watch, right? Depending on how many stations we have. For example, like, in the past, there was, like, 6 refs, right? So we had all these stations. It was, like, really hard to keep track of everything. There's tons of stuff going on. Now we have more and more, they add more and more officials each event so far. So now it's, you know, you get to give your full attention to what you're doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the gist of it, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. How many referees are currently working at an MLG event?
I can't speak for the other games, but for StarCraft, it is, I want to say like 10, something like that.
Wow.
A lot more than we've had in the past. We were down to like 5 at one point.
Yeah.
But now we have a pretty reasonable round. And to be perfectly honest, as long as you have some ability to multitask mentally, it's not super challenging.
Yep.
To juggle everything. The hard part is making sure, you're helping everyone the best you can and not letting it bother you if some player is being a dick or something like that. Just making sure everything's fair and you're unbiased and stuff like that. How many stations and how much work you have isn't really the problem, as long as you don't mind, being up for 12 hours or whatever.
Yeah. No, it sounds like a very time-consuming, energy-consuming job.
Definitely survive on energy drinks.
And is there something that sticks in your mind in your experience as a StarCraft referee at MLG? Something like Josh commented, right? I mean, do you have an experience of that you're like, wow, this is awesome?
Yeah, there's been a couple. Anytime I've been able to meet Boxer has been like just the most mind-blowingly cool thing to me, right? Like, cause Boxer was like my video game hero. Like, the reason I got into, or even became aware of competitive gaming is watching like Slayer's Boxers, like Pimpest Plays on YouTube. So getting to meet him and just seeing how like genuine and passionate he was as a person and how nice he was just hugely cool. Like, I don't know if you ever saw that picture that they turned into like a wallpaper and stuff like that of Boxer just like practicing alone at the end of the day. Like, I got to be there and see that. I got to see him be like one of the first people to show up to practice and be the last one to leave the venue practicing. And seeing that was just like,
wow.
It was like you could just see how passionate, these players and specifically Boxer was about the game and why he was doing it too. It was for the fans, cause like you get there at like, I think it was Anaheim, right? When it was his first.
Yeah.
Yeah. People just chanting his name as he comes on stage. And he had no idea that the foreign fans would even knew who he was probably, let alone they just be chanting his name even when he loses. And you could tell it really affected him, and he wanted to show good games for the fans there.
Wow.
And
wow, that's amazing.
There was also similar stories to Josh about MMA. MMA is just one of these awesome, genuine people, and he always goes out of his way to come say hello to me, which is really cool. Every time he's been to an event, he'll run up and he'll high five all the refs and things like that. Cause he's one of those guys, like Josh said, he really appreciates that that MLG, went out of their way to make those guys comfortable. And Josh went out of his way to make those guys comfortable, make sure they have a good time. The Korean players that come over, they love it, man. They have the time of their life when they come to MLGs. It's really cool to see them appreciate what we're doing for them, Wow. And the other story I have that I'm going to remember for a long time is we have a rule at MLGs that you have to use USB keyboards. You can't use a PS2 interface. It's the old circular plugs, kind of the two circular plugs, right?
Yeah.
But all the Korean players before would use those keyboards. And so it's been a rule for, quite a while now that you couldn't use them. And one of the players that came over was Marine King Prime.
Oh,
and
okay.
This is when he was sponsored by Reddit, sort of. Reddit went together and they donated and got Marine King to come over to an MLG and everything like that. And, Marine King's having the time of his life. It's cool, but he finds out that he can't use his keyboard. And I had to tell him, sorry man, you can't use his keyboard. Milkus is there and Milkus is explaining to him, and you can just see his expression. He's whole body just drops. His face falls. He's oh no, I don't have a keyboard. I'm not gonna be comfortable. Things like that. And Milkus is do you guys have anything we can use? I'm well, we have these. I'm not gonna say the company name, but we have these keyboards that we loan out to people, and nobody really likes them. They're not professional grade keyboards that that the players will use. It's And so he looked at him and he's just oh no, what am I gonna do, right? So I have a Razer Black Widow. It's my personal keyboard. And I went up to him hey man, do you want to try this? It's my keyboard, but you check it out. If you like it, you can use it for the whole event. And so he looks at me, he's oh thank you. He tries it out. And he's yeah, I really like it. All right, great. It's thank you very much. So I go about my business. I'm yeah, good luck, because I'm a Terran player and obviously a huge Slayer's Boxers fan, and so I'm a big Marine King fan too. So I'm like, awesome.
Foxer! Back in the day.
Awesome. Fox might use my keyboard. Sweet, And somebody like mentioned it on Reddit, and I made a thread. I'm like, hey, yeah, I was the one who loaned him my keyboard. And they're like, oh, cool, thanks. Because I felt really cool because I'm like, oh, right, all these people paid for Marine King to come over. The least I can do is try to make sure, he puts out his best effort and has a good time. I'll loan him my keyboard, And so a few minutes later, he comes back over with Milkus, and they're asking, like, can we pull some keys out? Because Black Widows have these, like, macro keys on the side that aren't, like, on normal keyboards. I was like, sure. And he's like, can you do it? I don't want to break your keyboard. I'm like, all right, sure. And we pulled him out. And I told him, and, like, he was, like, so excited that he could borrow the keyboard. And I told him, like, all right, Marine King, if you win, you can keep the keyboard. Just good luck, man. Have fun. And so he used my keyboard for the whole event, and he did pretty well. Obviously he didn't win or anything like that, but he was, he was really thankful, and it was cool. It was like a cool moment. I felt like I got to, like, give something a little bit back to the community and to, a player I really liked watching, because I basically owe my job to, like, Team Liquid based, and the StarCraft community, because I would never even have come to an MLG if it wasn't for, watching streams and videos on, like, Team Liquid and stuff like that. So that was kind of like a neat story.
No, man, no, it's awesome. I see it as, if a tennis player, like, they say to him, you can't use that kind of racket, and he's like, oh man, what am I gonna do? And then you come along and say, here, use mine. And he makes a good game, and he goes fairly well in the tournament. That's awesome, man.
Yep. And I got him to sign it, and I was thinking about selling it or giving it away, but I just, like, haven't been able to bring myself to do it. I'm like, no, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Do a nice gesture. I want to keep it.
Yeah, for sure. Man. Well, that's quite an in-depth description of what you do and how you influence, how key your role is behind an MLG event. And, to close the questions directed to you, Dave, how is the job market for StarCraft 2 referees, or any type of eSports referee for that matter? I mean, is there something like a post in the internet somewhere and saying, we need LOL referees, please send your CVs, or something like that?
Well, it's really hard to get paid doing what I'm doing. I know, like, Playhem, for example, just very recently had a post saying they needed new admins and stuff like that, because it's a pretty thankless job, and it's a job you have to have people that are very reliable and trustworthy in, right? So, and it's also a job that most people can't really pay you to do. So it's like this weird combination where you have to find someone that's trustworthy and they're reliable, but they don't mind just volunteering for hours and hours and hours to sit around and do, So it's people need admins. But it's very difficult to get paid doing it. And to be perfectly honest, like, I'm more happy to be a part of MLG than I am to be an admin. I'm glad I can do anything with MLG. And if I had my my choice, I would do something in production or something like that, instead of working as an admin. But it's a good job, and it's a fun job, and you get to meet amazing people, and you get to be involved with eSports. So if John Smith out there or whatever wants to get involved with StarCraft or eSports in general and sees a job opening for as an admin, even if it's volunteer, jump on it, go for it, get involved somehow, because it's all about, from what I found in this business, it's all about getting your foot in the door and just starting to get involved, and then networking and getting yourself out there. So just jump on the opportunity. Never say no to an opportunity, especially in eSports.
True enough. Well, guys, we're in the end of the interview. I think we covered quite a lot, actually. I mean, we could talk all day about eSports and MLG. But to close it up, this goes for both of you, what things are you looking for to improve, or even if it's necessary to change, or what would you like to see within Major League Gaming, within MLG itself? If there is any.
That's a really tough question because I feel like MLG, this isn't just like brown nosing, but I feel like they do a really good job of adapting and growing, and they provide a product that's very difficult to do. A stable esports company is like not a thing that exists very often. So a lot of the things that I would like to see they're working on, they're going to do anyway. So I can't really think of something specific. I mean, there's obviously like, oh yeah, improve, hire me for production full time or something like that. I mean, yeah. I would, it's hard to say what MLG specifically could do. Like, there's a lot of things the industry needs to do in general, and like we went over earlier, being able to let people do it full time, more people do it full time would be massive. But it's not something that MLG can just do, you know?
Yeah.
So I don't know, Josh, do you have anything specific? It's like more chairs?
Yeah, I think one thing that they could do would be take a note from BlizzCon of have a player lounge area that players can go to eat, like just like have catered sandwiches or salads or something like that. So the players don't have to rely on what kind of food there is around the convention center that's not going to be open after 7 o'clock and stuff like that, because every city's different, right?
Yeah.
So if there was a specific place that had like a couch or two that the players could just sit down, talk to each other, eat, and then go focus on their matches, they're not too far away. They don't have to go far away. They can hear their name if they're announced for a next match. Mm-hmm. I think MLG could definitely do that. The player pit could either be behind the stage or it could be like in the middle of where all the fans are, because, you know, the fans are there to see the players as well, right? But I just feel that there needs to be a sectioned off area that the players can just take a break for like a couple minutes or maybe even an hour, that they don't have to go all the way to their hotel room and all the way back. So I think that could definitely happen at NMLG. And I've talked about that with Tyler, Noni. Yeah. That, you know, him, I said, yeah, I would love to see that, because sometimes it's difficult where I have to go find a player and they went all the way back to their hotel room because they needed to find something to eat.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that
yeah, that's amazing. Of course I'd love to get paid more for a full-time job, but it's not there yet, economically. And, you know, MLG is a young company. It's run by, you know, Sundance, who is young compared to the economic world, and it's a young concept. Esports is a young concept.
Yeah.
And having your main distributor be the internet is still a young concept. We're not building off of distributors or studios that have existed in media in Hollywood or even in New York City. We're building something new here. There's a lot that we can learn from them.
Yeah.
But the internet is a new frontier, and it's a lot more exciting frontier compared to television.
Yeah, true.
So, but we still need to act like professionals and to learn the professional ways of media before us and to acclimate that into the internet world.
Yeah.
But yeah, MLG is young. I mean, Puckett's young. I think I'm older than Puckett. And he's the executive producer of StarCraft 2. But he's doing a great job. He's done 60 MLG events.
Whoa.
So the guy knows about esports events, right?
Yeah.
But, you know, we're all learning here. And sometimes we have to have patience with our fellow employees or leaders or managers because we're all learning. We're all trying to make it grow and to make it better.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that through new events and new situations that come up within esports, because again, we can't stress this enough. You know, it's quite new, and overall, like, people learn and circumstances have to adapt, and certain tournament rules might be changed or not in the future, be it, you know, as a referee or, you know,
extended
whatever.
Series or not.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So true enough. And well, last but not least, any shout outs that you guys would like to give?
Wiggin, go ahead and go first.
Well, I guess to you for having me on, man. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Oh no, thank you.
I'm always happy to do this kind of thing. I guess since a lot of this was about how we got into esports and stuff like that, I'd like to give a shout out to Lee Chen and Ryan Moore and Mark Snyder, my bosses, especially Lee Chen, who got me into MLG. It was quite an interesting resume process. I had to give my StarCraft rank and my WoW Arena rank and things like that. I've never had to do that for a job before, but it was really, it's like people like that just are why eSports is so amazing. So, I'll just give a shout out to those guys. And also my fellow MLG employees like Galen Andrus, Omerta, and, Dylan Lowry.
Yeah.
So yeah, and also follow me on Twitter at MLG_Wiggin, and follow me on Twitch TV, the same name.
Awesome. Clutch?
Big shout outs to Lee Chen, and to Mark Turner. They believed in me and in Wiggin just from having conversations with us. But they could tell that our passion was true when it came to esports. So thanking them for giving us a chance to work, with MLG. And to everybody that follows me on Twitter, thank you so much, and that comes and watches my show, Shifting Gears, which is every Tuesday night at 10 p.m. Eastern, at twitch.tv/clutch08. You can follow me on Twitter at clutch08. And Daigo is the greatest mod that has ever existed in any Twitch stream. He is fantastic. I almost feel guilty how good he is.
No. Not really. I'm trying to do my best. That's all.
Nah, it's very professional, man. Thank you so much. But to all of the constructive criticism and the amount of thanks I get, somebody told me recently that I need to own up to my compliments. I shouldn't shrug them off, or just think that people are just being nice, but I should really own up to the compliments that people give me. So to everybody that says that they love my work and they enjoy me being an MC, thank you so much, and thank you for telling the world that, either on Reddit or Team Liquid. I know I'm not perfect, but I have a really good time because I love what I do, and I'm so grateful that translates on camera and live. So I plan to be involved in esports as much as I can. Financially, though, I need to make some decisions and look at auditions that happen in the acting world, and I'll try my best not to have any conflicts come up with any MLG or other esports events. But if they do, like I said, I'll try to avoid it, but if they do, I will always try my best to be involved in the esports realm. Even after I get my first or second Oscar, I'll still MC events. So yeah, but I look forward to what the future holds for esports, and especially for Diablo 3, because I really think that could be an esport. I look forward to that game.
Hopefully.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man, it's coming
up. PvP. Them arenas.
That PvP, man. Oh my gosh. It is so much fun. Jay Wilson, I know you don't want to make it an esport, but guess what? The community does, and that's all it takes.
True enough. That is true. Now let's see what happens with it. Well, guys, thank you so much for being here. It's quite an honor, I have to say, having you both and talk about esports in US and what happens at MLG in a weekend. That's pretty enlightening. Anyway, guys, that you're listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Please subscribe, rate, comment. It really helps the channel and the show grow. And see you guys next time.